All right, so dive in with me here. You guys sent us a ton of reviews for Madagascar too. Escape to Africa.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's trying to decide if it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Maybe prepping for that family movie night debate.
And the range of reviews we got.
Oh, it's incredible.
It really is.
We've got everything from like those professional critic blurbs
Right.
to like the passionate IMDb rants.
Yeah.
We even have someone claiming to review the film as a cat.
Okay, so first impression, just glancing at these, the reviews are all over the place.
They really are.
Some are calling it a worthy sequel, maybe even better than the original.
Right.
And then others are saying like, hard pass, skip it.
Yeah, like what is going on here?
What is happening?
One thing that keeps popping up, though, is the humor.
Okay.
A lot of reviewers are saying that a lot of the jokes might actually be geared more towards adults,
Interesting.
with references that'll like totally fly over younger viewers' heads.
Okay.
Some even mention some questionable innuendos in the kids' movie.
Now I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
And speaking of questionable, a lot of people are pointing out some like striking similarities to The Lion King.
Oh, right.
Inspiration or just a blatant ripoff?
It's a fine line.
It is?
But hold on a sec.
Okay.
We need to address the elephant in the room.
Which is penguins.
The penguins, yes.
Pretty much everyone agrees they steal the show.
I mean, you almost have to wonder, are they carrying the whole film, or is the movie itself actually strong enough to stand on its own?
Yeah, that's a good question.
But let's not forget that voice cast.
Oh, my goodness.
We've got Ben Stiller, Chris Rock,
Yes.
David Schwimmer, Jada Pinkett Smith, even Alec Baldwin, and the late Bernie Mac.
Yeah, that's some serious star power.
It is.
And, Bernie Mac's involvement kind of brings a touch of poignancy to it, you know, knowing that this was one of his last roles.
It does.
And speaking of things that add to the appeal,
Yeah.
the animation's getting a lot of praise.
Okay.
Particularly the African landscapes.
Some reviewers are even saying it's almost worth watching just for the scenery.
Okay, so let's unpack some of these individual reviews and see what we can find.
Okay.
Let's start with that professional critic review.
Sure.
I feel like that's always a good, level set overview of the plot and the characters.
Yeah, a nice structured overview.
Exactly.
To ground the discussion.
Right. So this review mentions that the story picks up right where the first Madagascar left off, with Alex, Marty, Melman, and Gloria, still stranded on that island.
So no time wasted on reintroductions.
Right.
It makes sense for a sequel, but it is interesting that they're just assuming you've seen the first one.
Yeah.
Are they narrowing their target audience? Or is the first film just so, ingrained in pop culture at this point that it's a safe bet?
That's a good question. I mean, this review doesn't really touch on that, but it does mention that Skipper and the penguins, they've managed to get a plane to fly everyone back to New York.
Right.
Which, of course, ends up crashing in the middle of Africa.
Of course, classic sequel setup, right?
It is.
You got to raise the stakes, expand the world.
Yeah.
And a crash landing in Africa definitely opens up a whole new set of possibilities.
Right.
For both comedy and conflict.
Exactly. And it's here that the Lion King parallels start to kind of emerge.
Okay.
So it turns out Alex was actually born in Africa.
Right.
And was separated from his parents as a cub.
The lost prince returns to his rightful kingdom.
It is.
It's an age-old narrative, but it can be effective.
Yeah.
Both comedically and dramatically.
Right.
The question is, does Madagascar 2 do anything new with it?
Right.
Or is it just retreading familiar territory?
Well, according to this review, Alex meets up with other animals from Africa.
Okay.
Including a whole herd of zebras.
Oh, I can only imagine Chris Rock voicing a whole herd of zebras.
I know.
The comedic possibilities are endless.
Oh, and get this. Alice's parents are voiced by Bernie Mac and Sherry Shepherd.
That's inspired.
Right.
Bernie Mac's. That gruff yet lovable persona is perfect for Alex's father. Yeah. And then Sherry Shepherd brings that warmth and humor that just complements that dynamic so well.
So while Alex is trying to prove himself to his parents and fit in with the pride, Marty's having an identity crisis, realizing he's just one zebra among many.
Each character facing their own challenges.
Right.
That's a smart way to give them individual arcs within the larger narrative.
Yes.
And we also see this with Gloria trying to find a partner among the other hippos. And then Melman struggling with his fear of confessing his feelings for her.
Oh.
Classic love triangle setup.
Yeah.
But in a hippo-centric world.
Right. And speaking of love, there's this hunky hippo named Moto Moto.
Oh, yeah.
Who enters the picture, and guess who voices him?
I don't know.
Well,
as a smooth-talking hippo.
I know.
Now that's unexpected.
I'm starting to see why some reviewers found the humor a bit more adult-oriented.
Right.
So we've got all these storylines weaving together the penguins, you know, causing their usual chaos. And in the end, everyone gets a happy ending.
Okay.
Alex wins over his parents. Marty embraces his individuality. Melman finally confesses his feelings. And the four friends decide to stay in their newfound African home.
So a pretty predictable resolution.
Yeah.
But is predictability always a bad thing?
That's true.
Especially in a family film.
Right.
Some viewers might appreciate that comfort of a happy ending.
They might.
Yeah.
But this particular critic wasn't overly impressed.
Yeah.
Said the animation was decent, but the characters weren't as lovable this time around.
Interesting.
And the story felt a bit flat.
Okay.
They even admitted to dozing off at one point.
Oh, wow. Maybe the predictability played a part in that.
Yeah.
You can see the ending coming a mile away.
Right.
It might take some of the excitement out of the journey.
Maybe. But hey, at least they acknowledged the animation was good.
True. And even a so-called boring film can still offer moments of entertainment and, you know, visual spectacle.
All right, let's move on to some of those colorful IMDb reviews. Yes.
Remember that cat reviewer?
Oh, yes.
I mentioned?
I'm very curious to hear that feline perspective.
Okay, so get this. The review starts off with, quote, "I think that I hate Ethan Coen, Mark Burton, and Billy Frolic. I'm glued to my plasma watching the same thing over and over incessantly. It's animal abuse at its best. Madagascar is the kind of film you can see 1,000 times." End quote.
That's brilliant.
I know.
It's like a playful way to acknowledge that addictive nature of some of these animated films, especially from a cat's perspective.
Right.
You know, they're often stuck watching whatever their owners put on.
Exactly. And then the reviewer goes on to say, quote, "In Madagascar 2, Escape to Africa, we finally learn how it came to be that Alex found himself in the New York City Zoo. We also meet his family and learn what it's like in the wild, this time the African wild, where even Marty, the zebra, finds a flock of his own kind." End quote.
So even though the cat claims to hate the filmmakers, they actually seem to appreciate the exploration of Alex's backstory and the character's journeys of self-discovery.
That's true. That says something about the film's ability to engage viewers on an emotional level.
Right.
Even if they're not consciously aware of it.
And of course, they gave a shout out to that star-studded voice cast.
Of course.
They even mentioned Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, David Schwimmer, Jada Pinkett Smith, Sacha Baron, Coleman Cedric the Entertainer, Andy Richter, Bernie Maligas, Alec Baldwin, and Sherry Shepherd.
It's quite the ensemble cast.
It is.
It seems like they spared no expense in assembling some of the biggest names in comedy.
And you know what? The cat reviewer actually loved the penguins.
Oh.
They said, quote, "I love the penguins. I love the lemurs," end quote.
Looks like those penguins are universally beloved. Even cats can't resist their charm.
It's true, but here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Several other reviewers actually claim that Madagascar 2 is even better than the first film.
Really?
What are they seeing that this critic missed?
Yeah.
Well, one reviewer who gave the movie a 10 out of 10 actually said, quote, "I feel as though the sequel caters to an older audience as well as the kiddies, which makes it way more enjoyable," end quote.
That's a valuable insight.
Right.
It suggests that the filmmakers were successful in creating a film that appeals to a wider demographic.
Yeah.
Balancing humor and heart in a way that resonates with both children and adults.
Yes.
Perhaps the critic just wasn't attuned to that particular blend of humor.
That's a good point, and it makes you wonder if the age of the reviewer plays a role in how they perceive the humor.
Oh, absolutely.
Could it be that younger viewers are actually picking up on those adult jokes and references without even realizing it?
It's totally possible.
Yeah.
Children are often more perceptive than we give them credit for.
Right.
They absorb information and humor from their surroundings.
Yes.
Even if they don't fully understand the nuances.
So maybe the filmmakers are deliberately crafting jokes that work on multiple levels.
It's a clever strategy if that's the case.
It is.
It allows them to create a film that's both entertaining and engaging for a wider audience.
Another reviewer who gave Madagascar 2 a 10 out of 10 actually said, and I quote, "The worst part is when the movie ends, it's that good."
That's high praise.
It is.
It sounds like this viewer found Madagascar 2 to be a thoroughly enjoyable and entertaining experience.
Okay, this next review also gives the movie a 10 out of 10.
Oh,
but this one focuses on the animation.
Okay.
They specifically mentioned the beautiful and colorful animation.
Right.
And they even singled out the actors.
Okay.
They said, quote, "The actors are all good, especially Ben Stiller and Chris Rock as Alex and Marty. Alec Baldwin is deliciously evil as Macumba, and Bernie Mac, in his last movie, gives a great performance as Zuba, Alex's dad. End quote.
It's wonderful to hear that the animation quality remained consistent with the first film.
Yes.
And it's clear that the voice acting continues to be a major draw for many viewers.
But here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
This reviewer also pointed out that, quote, the plot of the movie on Alex's side is a bit recycled from The Lion King, only that here the villain is alone and not with 3 stupid hyenas as his henchmen, end quote.
Okay, so those Lion King parallels are becoming more and more apparent.
They are.
It seems like the filmmakers might have borrowed certain plot elements and character archetypes.
Right.
But does that automatically make it a bad film?
Right.
Or can a film still be enjoyable even if it relies on familiar tropes?
That's the question for the ages.
It is.
I mean, storytelling is all about using familiar archetypes and structures in new and interesting ways.
Right.
The key is whether Madagascar 2 brings something fresh to the table.
Exactly.
Or if it's just a lazy rehash of The Lion King.
And that's where those individual perspectives become so valuable.
Right.
We can look at the same plot elements and see how different viewers respond to them.
Yes.
Some might be bothered by the similarities, while others might not even notice them.
Right.
Or simply enjoy the ride, regardless.
Okay, let's dive into some more of those IMDb reviews and see what other gems we can uncover.
Right.
This next one gives the movie a 6 out of 10, which is a pretty middle-of-the-road score. They say, and I quote, the first one was funny, but this one is even funnier. The animation is better, too. It's much smoother than the first one, end quote.
Interesting.
Right.
It seems this viewer appreciated the evolution of both the humor and the animation quality. But does that necessarily mean that the film is good?
Well, they did say, quote, the old lady also gets some good laughs, too. As a villain, she's not really evil, just a survivor who comes into conflict with the main cast. End quote.
Absolutely.
Right.
Nana's a great example of a character who's both comedic and relatable.
Yes.
She's not trying to take over the world or anything.
Right.
She's just trying to protect her turf and survive.
Right.
And that can be a refreshing change of pace from the typical cartoon villain.
And this reviewer also had some good things to say about the penguins, saying, quote, the penguins are also a trip in the movie, as always, end quote.
They are a trip.
They are.
That fish out of water theme is classic for a reason.
It is.
It's inherently funny to see characters struggle with unfamiliar surroundings and customs.
Right.
And in this case, it seems like the filmmakers used that to their advantage.
Yes.
To create some truly memorable and hilarious moments.
This next reviewer gives the movie a 9 out of 10 and says, and I quote, this sequel is a step forward from the first one, maybe because the story is more interesting and the plot is better developed, end quote.
That's encouraging to hear.
Right.
It suggests that the filmmakers learned from the first film.
Yeah.
And made a conscious effort to improve the storytelling and pacing in the sequel.
They also called it, and I quote, a nonstop laughing for an hour and a half with some very funny references from other movies, end quote.
It's all about finding the right balance.
It is.
Too many pop culture references can feel forced or dated.
Right.
But when used sparingly and effectively, they can add an extra layer of humor and engagement for viewers who are in the know.
And speaking of knowing, this next review gives the movie a 9 out of 10 and is short and sweet. They said, quote, a lot of fun, great state of spirit, nice birthmark, awesome adventures, and great use of venerable lady as the enemy of Alex, end quote.
It's a succinct,
yet
enthusiastic endorsement.
Yes.
It really captures the essence of the film's appeal, fun adventure, and memorable characters.
And they even added, quote, and no doubts, beautiful moral lessons supported by inspired cultural references for adults and a fine enthusiasm seed for kids. So just a nice film, end quote.
So it seems like this reviewer appreciated the film's ability to entertain and engage viewers of all ages.
All right, ready for another glowing review?
Let's hear it.
This one says, quote, I never get tired of watching this film. My favorite part is the zebra part where Marty mixes in with the herd. It is nice to see him in his element, end quote.
Ah, yes. Marty's journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
It's a relatable theme.
Yes.
Particularly for children who are in the process of figuring out their own place in the world.
Right. And they also raved about the voice acting and the music, saying, quote, the voices could not be better. The music is magnificent, and all in all, I don't think you could make a better animated feature, end quote.
That's high praise.
It is.
It speaks to the film's overall quality and its ability to create a truly immersive experience.
Okay, this next review gives the movie a 7 out of 10 and says, and I quote, Madagascar, Escape to Africa is one of the rare sequels that I'd say is better than the first. It's no masterpiece, don't get me wrong, but I feel as though it's a more confident and focused affair overall, end quote.
It's always fascinating to hear from viewers who had a change of heart about a franchise.
Right.
It speaks to the sequel's ability to win over skeptical audiences.
And it speaks to the power of a strong story to draw viewers in. They then went on to make some interesting observations about the characters, saying, quote, the first flick had a hard time deciding who it wanted to be its protagonist, Marty or Alex. In fact, it started out focusing on the former, but ended up focusing on the latter. This film doesn't have that issue. Its focus is firmly on its show-off of a lion, end quote.
That's a perceptive point.
It is.
It highlights the importance of clarity in storytelling.
Yes.
Especially in a sequel where audiences have certain expectations about the characters and their roles.
They also weren't thrilled with how some of the supporting characters were handled, saying, quote, the other characters, aside from Alex, are sadly rather sidelined. Gloria and Melman are thrown into a rather uninteresting subplot consisting of romance, mass hypochondria, self-sacrifice, and thick hippos, end quote.
It's a valid criticism.
Yeah.
Sometimes in an effort to give each character their moment.
Right.
Certain storylines can feel underdeveloped or less engaging than others.
And they had a particularly pointed observation about Marty's storyline, saying, and I quote, Marty is frankly done dirty. His subplot consists of him coming to realize that he's exactly the same as every other zebra on the continent, with even his friends struggling to tell him apart from his equally striped equine peers. This is really weird because the zebras are the only species that all look and sound the same. Every other type of animal has an appearance and voice that's distinct from the other members of their group, end quote.
That's a fascinating point about the visual representation of different species in the film.
Right.
It does seem a bit inconsistent.
It does.
And perhaps even a tad insensitive.
Yeah.
To portray all zebras as identical.
Right.
While other animals are given more individual characteristics.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the film's messaging around individuality. And whether it's unintentionally reinforcing certain stereotypes.
And then they added, quote, it's also really weird because the plotline's ultimate message isn't that Marty is actually unique in a meaningful way that he eventually comes to appreciate, as the setup of the subplot would suggest, but that he is indeed the same as every other member of his species, except for the fact that he has a scar on his backside from when Alex bit him during the events of the first movie. His only defining characteristic ends up being a superficial scar. Huh. Who thought that was a good idea? I mean, it's a bit, dare I say, problematic, right? End quote.
It's certainly a thought-provoking observation.
It is.
It raises questions about the film's handling of themes related to identity and individuality.
And on a lighter note, this reviewer also pointed out that the penguins and King Julian are still the highlights of the movie, saying, quote, the penguins are still the movie's main highlight, but King Julian stands out as its best aspect overall. He's even more endearing than he was in his last outing, end quote.
Those characters are definitely fan favorites. They are. Their comedic energy and quirky personalities really shine through.
All right, this next review is from someone who didn't love the first movie, but found themselves enjoying the sequel.
Interesting.
They gave it a 7 out of 10 and said, quote, the story was quite good and you instantly get swept up and carried away into the storyline, end quote.
It's a testament to the sequel's ability to stand on its own.
Yes.
Even if you haven't seen the original.
Right.
And it speaks to the power of a strong story to draw viewers in.
This reviewer also had high praise for the voice acting, saying, quote, the characters in the movie were likable and funny, and it really worked to their advantage that they had such a great ensemble of voice actors to perform the various roles and voices throughout the animated movie, end quote.
It's a reminder that voice acting is a true art form.
It is.
And those actors bring so much depth and personality to these characters.
And this reviewer also loved the animation, saying, quote, the drawing style and art style was good, and there was a lot of detail in every scene throughout the entire movie. There was a good combination of music and singing and ordinary cartoon here without it turning into a stereotypical animated movie like those seen produced by Disney, end quote.
It sounds like the filmmakers achieved a good balance of visual appeal and narrative substance.
This next reviewer kept it short and sweet, saying, quote, it may not be perfect, but it's a huge improvement over the first. With that being said, hop on in and take a trip to Africa where you may discover a wild side of your own, end quote.
That's a fun way to frame the viewing experience.
It is.
It invites the audience to engage with the film's themes of adventure and self-discovery.
And they also pointed out that, quote, This time around, there is no more of that uncomfortable predator-prey relationship, end quote.
That's a curious comment.
It is.
Perhaps the first film had some elements that felt tonally jarring or thematically questionable.
Maybe. But let's move on to another review that focuses on those beloved supporting characters. Okay.
They said, quote, "The penguins get to play a bigger role, which is no surprise after their show-stealing performance in the first Madagascar picture. They have most of the funniest lines," end quote.
The penguins are a force to be reckoned with.
They are.
Their popularity is undeniable.
Right.
And it sounds like they continue to deliver the laughs in the sequel.
They continued saying, quote, "For some, it might feel a bit too much story plot, and I guess at least the really young kids might not get everything. But they still will be entertained, though. And while the movie is entertaining, compared to almost any Pixar movie, this seems like a fast food snack. Not bad at all, but not really great either," end quote.
That's a fair assessment. It acknowledges the film's limitations in terms of depth and originality, while also recognizing its entertainment value.
This next review is incredibly enthusiastic.
Okay.
They give Madagascar 2 a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
Calling it 1,000 times better than the first movie.
That's high praise.
They go on to say that they generally love animated movies.
But the first Madagascar didn't do much for them.
Okay.
However, this one had them laughing from start to finish.
All right.
They particularly enjoyed the penguins and the king, saying they stole the show.
It seems like this viewer connected with the sequel's humor on a deeper level than the first film.
They also call it one of their favorite movies of 2009.
Wow.
And say that the worst part is when the movie ends, it's that good.
It's a testament to the film's ability to entertain and delight.
Okay, this next review is from Bethany Cox.
Okay.
She gives the movie a 7 out of 10, calling it a fun sequel that lives up to the first.
That's an interesting observation.
It is.
It suggests a potential shift in tone and emphasis between the two films.
She mentions that while it's not as zany as the original, it has more heart.
Yep.
She does acknowledge the predictable plot and similarities to The Lion King.
Right.
But ultimately, she praises the beautiful animation, the great characters, and the hilarious voice acting.
It sounds like a well-rounded assessment.
It does.
Acknowledging both the film's strengths and weaknesses.
She particularly enjoyed Sacha Baron Cohen's performance as Julian, calling him a hoot.
He certainly has a knack for bringing larger-than-life animated characters to life.
He does.
Yeah.
Here's another review that highlights the importance of the African setting.
Okay.
The reviewer gives the movie an 8 out of 10 and says that the move to Africa allows for more penguin screen time, funnier jokes, and a brighter, happier movie.
It's interesting how this reviewer sees the setting as integral to the film's overall tone and humor.
Right.
It makes you wonder if the first film's island setting might have felt a bit limiting in those regards.
And they also mention how this movie doesn't have the same uncomfortable predator-prey relationship as the first one.
It's definitely intriguing.
I know.
It makes you wonder if there were certain elements in the first film that felt tonally off or thematically problematic for some viewers.
They also found Alex's storyline in this movie to be more compelling, especially the aspect of him trying to live up to his father's expectations.
That theme of familial expectations and the pressure to conform is certainly relatable.
It is.
Even for viewers who aren't lions.
Absolutely. Okay, this next review is brief but jarring.
Okay.
They give Madagascar 2 a 2 out of 10 rating and simply say, totally inappropriate for young, age 5 to 6 children.
Wow. Another strong reaction. But without further context, it's hard to know what specifically they found inappropriate.
It's a good reminder that audience sensitivities vary widely.
Absolutely.
And it highlights the importance of parental discretion, even with films that are marketed as family-friendly.
Yes.
This next review is a bit more detailed.
Well,
the reviewer gives the movie a 9 out of 10, praising its humor, animation, and music.
Right.
They specifically mentioned enjoying the visual depiction of Africa.
Okay.
And loving the theme song, Move It.
That vibrant setting and catchy music can really enhance a film's entertainment value.
It can?
Yeah, it sounds like the filmmakers paid close attention to creating a visually and orally engaging experience.
They also found a deeper message within the film, saying that Marty's statement about love having no boundaries resonated with them, and that it applies not just to romantic love, but also to love between friends and family.
That's a beautiful sentiment and a testament to the film's ability to touch upon universal themes of love and connection.
We also have another short and to-the-point review.
Okay.
Just one word. Disappointed.
Short but impactful.
It is.
Clearly, this viewer had certain expectations that weren't met.
This next review is a bit more detailed.
Okay.
The reviewer gives Madagascar 2 a 6 out of 10, saying, "Without a doubt, the penguins steal the show. Their banter and antics are just downright hysterical. Granny, on the other hand, needs to be retired. A cameo of her might have been funny, but she is overused to the point of irritation."
It's interesting how subjective humor can be.
It is.
What one viewer finds hilarious, another might find grating.
Right. And this reviewer also felt like the movie tried to juggle too many subplots, saying, "The ill-fated aircraft ride is a raucous ride." But after that, the story splits into 4 or 5, at least, concurrent subplots, so enough time isn't really given to each, and the pacing tends to jerk along in spurts.
That's a common criticism.
It is.
Of films that try to do too much.
Yes.
It can leave the audience feeling overwhelmed and emotionally disconnected from the characters and their individual journeys.
They also felt like the filmmakers were trying to capitalize on the success of the penguins, saying it seems like they strung together scenes of the funniest supporting characters from the original, then tried to wrap it around a Lion King send-up.
It's a valid observation.
It is.
It makes you wonder if the filmmakers were more focused on delivering crowd-pleasing moments than on crafting a cohesive and emotionally resonant narrative.
Despite their criticisms, this reviewer did admit to liking this one better than the original. And they ended with a plea for DreamWorks to give the penguins their own full-length movie.
There's no denying their comedic appeal.
This next review is overwhelmingly positive.
Okay.
They give Madagascar 2 a 10 out of 10, calling it 1,000 times better than the first movie.
Wow, that's a high praise.
They go on to say that they generally love animated movies, but the first Madagascar didn't do much for them. However, this one had them laughing from start to finish.
That's great.
They particularly enjoyed the penguins and the king, saying they stole the show.
It seems like this viewer connected with the sequel's humor on a deeper level than the first film.
They also call it one of their favorite movies of 2009 and say that the worst part is when the movie ends, it's that good.
That's a testament to the film's ability to entertain and delight.
Okay, this next review is from Bethany Cox.
Right.
She gives the movie a 7 out of 10, calling it a fun sequel that lives up to the first.
That's an interesting observation. It suggests a potential shift in tone and emphasis between the two films.
She mentions that while it's not as zany as the original, it has more heart. She does acknowledge the predictable plot and the similarities to The Lion King, but ultimately she praises the beautiful animation, the great characters, and the hilarious voice acting.
It sounds like a well-rounded assessment, acknowledging both the film's strengths and weaknesses.
She particularly enjoyed Sacha Baron Cohen's performance as Julian, calling him a hoot.
He certainly has a knack for bringing larger-than-life animated characters to life.
He does.
Yeah.
Here's another review that highlights the importance of the African setting.
Okay.
The reviewer gives the movie an 8 out of 10 and says that the move to Africa allows for more penguin screen time, funnier jokes, and a brighter, happier movie.
It's interesting how this reviewer sees the setting as integral to the film's overall tone and humor. It makes you wonder if the first film's island setting might have felt a bit limiting in those regards.
And they also mention how this movie doesn't have the same uncomfortable predator-prey relationship as the first one. I'm really curious about what they're referring to, but they don't elaborate.
It's definitely intriguing. It makes you wonder if there were certain elements in the first film that felt tonally off or thematically problematic for some viewers.
Right. They also found Alex's storyline in this movie to be more compelling, especially the aspect of him trying to live up to his father's expectations.
That theme of familial expectations and the pressure to conform is certainly relatable even for viewers who aren't lions.
Absolutely. Okay, this next review is brief but jarring. They give Madagascar 2 a 2 out of 10 rating and simply say, totally inappropriate for young age 5 to 6 children.
Wow, that's quite a statement. It definitely makes you wonder what they found so objectionable. Unfortunately, they didn't elaborate.
Right. It's a good reminder that what's considered appropriate for children can vary greatly depending on cultural norms and individual sensitivities.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of parental discretion even with films that are marketed as family-friendly.
This next review is a bit more detailed. The reviewer gives the movie a 9 out of 10, praising its humor, animation, and music. They specifically mentioned enjoying the visual depiction of Africa and loving the theme song, Move It.
That vibrant setting and catchy music can really enhance a film's entertainment value. It sounds like the filmmakers paid close attention to creating a visually and orally engaging experience.
They also found a deeper message within the film, saying that Marty's statement about love having no boundaries resonated with them, and that it applies not just to romantic love, but also to love between friends and family.
That's a beautiful sentiment and a testament to the film's ability to touch upon universal themes of love and connection.
We also have another short and to-the-point review. Just one word: disappointed.
Short but impactful. Clearly, this viewer had certain expectations that weren't met.
This next review is a bit more detailed. The reviewer gives Madagascar 2 a 6 out of 10, saying, "Without a doubt, the penguins steal the show. Their banter and antics are just downright hysterical singable. Granny, on the other hand, needs to be retired. A cameo of her might have been funny, but she is overused to the point of irritation."
It's interesting how subjective humor can be. What one viewer finds hilarious, another might find grating.
Right. And this reviewer also felt like the movie tried to juggle too many subplots, saying, "The ill-fated aircraft ride is a raucous ride, but after that the story splits into 4 or 5 at least concurrent subplots, so enough time isn't really given to each, and the pacing tends to jerk along in spurts."
That's a common criticism of films that try to do too much. You can leave the audience feeling overwhelmed and emotionally disconnected from the characters and their individual journeys.
They also felt like the filmmakers were trying to capitalize on the success of the Penguins, saying it seemed like they strung together scenes of the funniest supporting characters from the original, then tried to wrap it around a Lion King send-up.
It's a valid observation. It makes you wonder if the filmmakers were more focused on delivering crowd-pleasing moments than on crafting a cohesive and emotionally resonant narrative.
Despite their criticisms, this reviewer did admit to liking this one better than the original, and they ended with a plea for DreamWorks to give the Penguins their own full-length movie.
There's no denying their comedic appeal.
This next review is incredibly enthusiastic. They give Madagascar 2 a 10 out of 10, calling it 1,000 times better than the first movie.
Wow, that's high praise.
They go on to say that they generally love animated movies, but the first Madagascar didn't do much for them. However, this one had them laughing from start to finish. They particularly enjoyed the penguins and the king, saying they stole the show.
It seems like this viewer connected with the sequel's humor on a deeper level than the first film.
They also call it one of their favorite movies of 2009 and say that the worst part is when the movie ends, it's that good.
That's a testament to the film's ability to entertain and delight.
Okay, this next review is from Bethany Cox. She gives the movie a 7 out of 10, calling it a fun sequel that lives up to the first.
That's an interesting observation. It suggests a potential shift in tone and emphasis between the two films.
She mentions that while it's not as zany as the original, it has more heart.
Okay.
She does acknowledge the predictable plot and similarities to The Lion King, but ultimately she praises the beautiful animation, the great characters, and the hilarious voice acting.
It sounds like a well-rounded assessment acknowledging both the film's strengths and weaknesses.
She particularly enjoyed Sacha Baron Cohen's performance, as Julian calling him a hoot.
She certainly has a knack for bringing larger-than-life animated characters to life.
Here's another review that highlights the importance of the African setting. The reviewer gives the movie an 8 out of 10 and says that the move to Africa allows for more penguin screen time, funnier jokes, and a brighter, happier movie.
It's interesting how this reviewer sees the setting as integral to the film's overall tone and humor. It makes you wonder if the first film's island setting might have felt a bit limiting in those regards.
And they also mention how this movie doesn't have the same uncomfortable predator-prey relationship as the first one. I'm still really curious about what they're referring to, but again, they don't elaborate.
It's a mystery, for sure. Maybe it's a challenge for our listeners to go back and watch the first film, see if they can spot what these reviewers are talking about.
I like that.
Little homework assignment.
Right. Okay, this next review is brief but jarring. They give Madagascar 2 a 2 out of 10 rating and simply say, totally inappropriate for young, age 5 to 6 children.
Another strong reaction, but without any more detail. It's tough to know what exactly they objected to.
It's true. This next reviewer seems to agree with that assessment, though, saying that the movie tries too hard to humor adults and contains too many sexual innuendos and too much violence for young children.
It's a valid concern. Trying to strike that balance between keeping kids entertained and appealing to adults can be tough. It sounds like this reviewer felt like Madagascar 2 missed the mark.
They also felt like the movie didn't live up to the original, saying it had almost nothing to do with zoo animals in the wild, and that the best parts were the limited scenes with the penguins and monkeys.
So this viewer seems to be yearning for a return to that core premise of the first film.
Right.
that clash between zoo life and the wild.
This next review is a bit more nuanced. They give the movie a 6 out of 10 and start by saying, quote, "Fun, yes, but largely unremarkable all the same," end quote.
A pretty fair assessment. It sounds like this viewer enjoyed the film but didn't find it particularly groundbreaking or memorable.
And they make an interesting point about sequels in general. They say, quote, "To be frank, there was no real reason for it to be made outside the fact that the first movie, although routinely mediocre, at least pulled in the green," end quote.
Ouch. Little cynical, but, often true.
It is true. They do give the filmmakers some credit, though, saying that the movie at least has some intelligent and heartfelt design to back up its pointless endeavors.
So not entirely without merit.
Right. This reviewer also felt like the sequel relies a little too heavily on melodrama, saying it often left them sulking rather than chuckling.
Again, we're seeing that divide between viewers who appreciate those attempts at emotional depth and those who find them a bit heavy-handed.
Yeah. They do, however, acknowledge that the humor is still present and that fans of the original will likely enjoy this one as well.
So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. This next review is overwhelmingly positive. They give Madagascar 2 an 8 out of 10, calling it way funnier than the original movie.
Another vote for the sequel's superior humor.
They praise the film's simple concept, funny jokes, and heartwarming message about friendship and self-discovery. They even say, quote, "Kids will love it, parents will be glad about it, and the rest of us will find it to be very amusing," end quote.
A pretty solid endorsement for a fun, family-friendly movie that seems to deliver on its promises.
They also rave about the penguins, calling them hardcore gangsters and freaking hilarious, and suggesting they deserve their own spin-off movie.
Those penguins are really making a name for themselves.
This next review echoes that sentiment, saying, "This movie really will give you a good laugh," and praising the penguins' genius and humor. They also commend the film's visual effects, especially the depiction of the African landscapes.
It's amazing what animation can do these days.
It is. And they were also touched by the film's message of love, saying, the last scene when Marty said that love has no boundary. I can't agree more. And I think that this does not only apply to love between lovers, but also applies to love between friends and family.
Another heartwarming takeaway.
This next review calls Madagascar 2 a good continuation of the story, praising its animation, humor, and character development.
Sounds like a solid endorsement.
This next review is interesting because they specifically mention wanting to see a penguin spinoff. They call the film a fun family film with a more coherent plot than the first one. They also highlight the humor and praise the old lady character, saying she's awesome to watch and listen to.
It's fascinating how, even within the positive reviews, there's this consistent praise for the supporting characters, particularly the penguins and Nana.
Right. They even suggest writing a Full Metal Jacket script for the penguins, which I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm oddly intrigued by the idea.
Oh, that's a spinoff I'd watch.
This reviewer also summarizes the plot, mentioning the plane crash, Alex reuniting with his parents, and Marty's discovery that all zebras look alike.
It seems like they pack a lot into these films.
They do. They conclude by saying that Madagascar 2 is a great family film and is fun for both the kids and the adults as well. But they also point out the interesting casting choice of Ben Stiller as Alex and Bernie Mac as his dad.
It's an interesting pairing.
This next review gives the movie a 7 out of 10, calling it a pretty enjoyable DreamWorks animation sequel. They mentioned enjoying the scenes with Alex fighting and dancing, and they found Marty's realization that all zebras are alike to be amusing.
So the film's humor seems to be landing with this viewer.
It does. They also highlight the sweetness of Gloria and Melman's love story and the comedic relief provided by the penguins, the lemur, and the small one being chased by a shark, which I'm assuming is Mort.
It sounds like they hit all the right notes.
Right, and they end by giving a shout-out to Bernie Mac's performance and the dedication to him at the end of the credits.
A fitting tribute.
It is. This next review focuses on the adventure aspect of the film, calling it funny and creative, even if the animation isn't the best. They give a brief plot summary mentioning the plane crash, the move to Africa, and the new experiences that the characters face.
It's a good reminder that a film doesn't have to have cutting-edge animation to be entertaining.
It doesn't? Okay, this next review is another short one. It's just 4 words. So good, I completely forgot I saw it.
Ouch. That's got to sting a little.
And this next review gives the movie a 7 out of 10 and says, quote, "To be honest, I thought that the first Madagascar movie was often being more irritating than funny Madagascar. Escape to Africa is a big improvement, however, as this movie is actually really pleasant to watch," end quote.
Another vote for the sequel being an improvement over the original.
This reviewer specifically praises the improved comedy, saying that Madagascar 2 actually builds up its comical moments instead of relying on fast pace and lots of screaming and jumping.
That suggests a more thoughtful approach to the humor, which is always refreshing.
It is. However, this reviewer did feel like the movie was a bit overstuffed with characters, saying that Marty, Melman, and Gloria weren't really necessary and that the story is really about Alex reuniting with his parents.
It's a valid point. Sometimes less is more.
Right. They also mentioned that the animation isn't top-notch, but that it's not too distracting because the movie is so fun to watch.
Sometimes a good story and engaging characters can outweigh any visual shortcomings.
And finally, they give a shout-out to the impressive voice cast, mentioning both the returning actors and the new additions of Bernie McBald, Alec Baldwin, and Will.i.am.
It's amazing how much talent they packed into this film.
It really is. This next review is short and to the point, calling the movie solid fun for the youngsters and giving it a 7 out of 10 rating.
A concise but positive endorsement.
This next one is even shorter, saying simply, fairly decent sequel to the animated hit. They give it a 6 out of 10.
Another middle-of-the-road assessment. Seems like this viewer enjoyed the film, but didn't find it particularly memorable.
Okay, this next review made me laugh out loud. It's just 3 words. Move on, and they give the movie a 4 out of 10.
I guess they're not telling us to move it to the theater.
Okay, buckle up, because this next review is a long one. This reviewer gives Madagascar 2 a 6 out of 10 and starts off by saying, and I quote, Madagascar, Escape to Africa, 2008, is one of the rare sequels that I'd say is better than the first. It's no masterpiece, don't get me wrong, but I feel as though it's a more confident and focused affair overall.
Another vote for the sequel being superior to the original.
They then go on to compare it to The Lion King, saying it's kind of like a less intense version, which, now that they mention it, is a pretty accurate description.
Yeah, those comparisons are hard to avoid.
They are. This reviewer also wasn't a fan of how Gloria and Melman were sidelined into a rather uninteresting subplot, and they found Marty's storyline to be problematic because it seemed to suggest that his only defining characteristic was a scar he got from Alex.
It's a good reminder that even with the best intentions, filmmakers can sometimes stumble into problematic territory or create subplots that feel unsatisfying.
They do, however, praise the penguins and King Julian, calling them the highlights of the movie.
Those two always seem to deliver.
Right. All right, get ready for a passionate one. This reviewer gives the movie a 3 out of 10 and holds nothing back. They start off by saying, quote, take the Madagascar out, and what you have is mad, because I paid $40 for the fam to watch the stinky movie Mad, because I had to watch this movie for however long it was mad, because I had to pretend like the hippos were not borderline R-rated, end quote.
Someone's not happy.
I know. And their anger seems to stem from their belief that this movie, like many kids' movies these days, tries too hard to appeal to adults, with too many sexual innuendos and violent scenes. They even say, quote, why do these movies have to try and humor adults? If I want to see a comedy for adults, I will go and see an adult comedy movie, end quote.
It's a valid point and a struggle that a lot of filmmakers face. Trying to find that balance between appealing to kids and adults without alienating either group is a tough one.
It is. They also felt like the movie was a missed opportunity, saying that the original Madagascar was different and light on the adult content, and that they were hoping this one would focus on unique plot and funny character slapstick without the innuendo.
It sounds like they were hoping for a return to the simplicity of the first film.
They conclude by saying that they wouldn't let kids under 10 years old watch this movie.
A strong stance, for sure.
It is. Okay, this next review offers a different perspective on the whole sequel phenomenon. They give the movie a 6 out of 10 and start by saying, quote, fun, yes, but largely unremarkable all the same. There are movies that, to be fair, never quite do anything remotely significant or innovative. They lack purpose for their existence. When it comes to sequels, this factor comes into play even more so. Madagascar 2, by all means, shouldn't have been made for any other reason other than that which gave it life in the first place. To be frank, there was no real reason for it to be made outside the fact that the first movie, although routinely mediocre, at least pulled in the green, end quote.
A bit cynical, but unfortunately true in many cases.
It is. They do give the filmmakers some credit, though, saying that the movie at least has some intelligent and heartfelt design to back up its pointless endeavors.
So it's not all bad.
This reviewer also felt like the sequel relies a little too heavily on melodrama, saying that it often left them sulking rather than chuckling.
It seems like that attempt at emotional depth didn't quite land for this viewer.
They do, however, acknowledge that the humor is still present and that fans of the original will likely enjoy this one as well.
I guess you could say it's more of the same, but with a slightly different flavor.
Okay, one final review. This one gives the movie an 8 out of 10 and kicks things off by saying, quote, "You gotta move it, move it." It rarely have I seen animated family sequel movie that's as good or better than its predecessor. But speaking as a movie freak who didn't like the first installment, I gotta say I'm very much entertained by Madagascar, Escape to Africa, and it is way funnier than the original movie.
Another one who didn't love the first film, but found themselves enjoying the sequel.
And they weren't shy about sharing their enthusiasm. They go on to praise the humor, the simple concept, and the heartwarming message. They even call out the penguins as the best part of the movie, saying they should have their own spin-off standalone movie.
I think we've heard that before.
I think we have. So there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of Madagascar 2, Escape to Africa through the eyes of the people who've seen it.
It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It really has. We've seen everything from glowing praise to utter disappointment and everything in between.
So what's the final verdict? Is Madagascar 2 a hilarious family adventure or a forgettable Lion King knockoff?
Well, I think the answer is it depends on who you ask.
Exactly. Every viewer brings their own unique perspective and expectations to the table.
And those expectations definitely seem to play a role in how people experience this film.
For sure. Some viewers might find the humor juvenile or the plot predictable, while others might appreciate the heartwarming moments and the visual spectacle.
It's true. And those penguins, well, they're a force of nature.
They really are. You can't deny their comedic charm.
And that seems to be the biggest takeaway here. Love it or hate it, Madagascar 2 definitely sparks conversation.
Absolutely. So whether you're planning a family movie night or just looking for something lighthearted and entertaining, this deep dive has hopefully given you a taste of what to expect.
It has. And ultimately, the best way to form your own opinion is to watch it for yourself. So grab some popcorn, settle in, and get ready for a wild ride.
And be sure to let us know what you think.
Yeah.